Buenas tardes, bienvenidos al Vitalik Inflation Tour 2021. Vamos a hacer una conversación, un ida y vuelta. Van a poder dejar preguntas en Twitter. AskVitalikBA es el hashtag para que puedan dejar sus preguntas. Así luego se las transmitiremos junto a Oli Goldschmidt, que nos está ayudando hoy con el hosteo de este evento bastante especial, bastante único. Esto ocurrió en 2 días. La idea surgió el domingo por el propio Vitalik, que dijo: no quiero que esto sea un viaje exclusivo, simplemente de vacaciones. Yo vine acá a querer ayudar a la comunidad de Ethereum argentina, quiero ayudar al país. No es un viaje político ni preparado en ese sentido, simplemente una forma de conocer nuestro país, donde ha despertado un montón de interés que es consecuencia de todos ustedes, que están transformando a la Argentina genuinamente en un Crypto Nation, a Buenos Aires en una Crypto City, y tenemos la dicha y la fortuna de tener a la referencia más importante de la industria visitando nuestro país. Sin más que agregar, comencemos la charla.
Ready when you are. Ready? Yes.
Ready, maybe.
How are you liking Buenos Aires and Argentina?
I'm very impressed. I definitely was not expecting to see a community of anywhere close to this level of size and energy. Just the number of people here, the number of projects here, the excitement of the people here, and is definitely amazing. It's much more than I've expected, even more than I've seen, I think, pretty much anywhere else in the world so far. So, yeah, no, I think it's... yeah, no, it's... yeah.
I think people are incredibly excited that you are here, and for what I've seen, had you experienced this level of rock star in anywhere else?
No.
No? First time. How do you like it?
Oh, dear.
Oh, dear.
Oh, dear.
Do you sometimes regret that you went public with this, or?
That's a good question. I don't know. I haven't really thought about that.
Okay.
How would you describe the Argentinians after these very first days that you were hanging out with us?
How do I describe Argentina? I guess people seem very friendly. The city is very nice. It feels like a good place to spend time. People here seem very smart and very motivated. Like, I think the difference between here and some of the wealthier countries is that, like, in wealthier places, there's people who are excited about, like, crypto as, like, the ideas and the theory. But people here, like, they feel this very kind of genuine excitement that, like they deeply understand that this is something that's solving real problems for them, and like, very connected to, like, the fact that like, blockchains and cryptocurrency are already providing, like, a lot of value to people here, and like every day, and very easily could provide even more value. So that, like, that kind of spirit, I think, is something that's just like very refreshing and very exciting to see.
Has anything that you knew before from Argentina impressed you in any way?
And I think I definitely had an impression before that, like, there were a lot of excellent Ethereum projects, and even projects that were, like, recognized for their value worldwide, were either partially based here or at least had people here, like Kleros. I've been a fan of Kleros for a long time. Part of the Kleros team is here. The Open Zeppelin and the Nomic team, I've been very aware of their work for a long time. Obviously, Proof of Humanity is... like, Proof of Humanity is one of those things that I think is, like, really important. I think one of the kind of big missing pieces of infrastructure that could really make the Ethereum world a kind of a more inclusive place.
I've heard you talk about the onboarding aspect of proof of humanity.
Exactly, yes. I think like one of the big benefits that I could see proof of humanity providing in the long term is that like if it provides people the ability to just get like even a little bit of cryptocurrency every month just by putting up a profile, then like that makes blockchain applications much more accessible, right? Like even if it's 25 cents a week, like 25 cents a week is not enough to pay for your food or your healthcare, but it is enough to ensure that you can send a few transactions on a rollup, right? And so like one of the reasons why like I've noticed some people from, I guess like you could call the more left-leaning decentralization space, like some of them are suspicious of cryptocurrency, is that like cryptocurrency-based applications are not as accessible, right? And like you need to have cryptocurrency to get them. But like if we can just like reduce that barrier, right? So you can just like go ahead and start participating, even if you're not like you don't have money, and even if you're not in a place where you can like get cryptocurrency like, because you don't have exchanges. Like I think that can address that concern quite a bit. So proof of humanity is great. Open Zeppelin is great. Kleros, I remember about 4 years ago, I made this post on Reddit saying like, hey, we should have decentralized courts. And then like 1 or 2 years later, like, hey, Kleros, it's a decentralized court. It exists. So Kleros is great. Pope, the proof of attendance protocol is also great. Yeah, so like all of these lovely things that like people around the world have all known about for a long time. Like they all come out of here. So I think there's just an amazing amount of talent here. And
yes, that amazing amount of talent is also combined with a difficult context, to say the least.
Yes.
So how do you think decentralization could help a country that has a shaken currency?
Yeah, one of like the impression I've gotten of Argentina so far is that it's a country that has a low state capacity but very high people capacity, and that's something that I think in some ways might even be the perfect environment for blockchains to make a big impact. Like it's like just the fact that the peso is inflating very quickly, and like people just understands the fact that like they can't like they can't hold it for long periods of time. They have to like constantly work with money and like constantly figure out like how to like avoid getting hit by the inflation, like constantly think how to like juggle between different assets. It's like in environments where people can like see very clearly kind of like what money is, how money works, and one where people I think are already are open to new ideas, and like I've definitely already been seeing some signs of like just like lots of people who are just like not so much like restaurants and cafes yet, from what I can tell, but just like regular people in just like various places who already accept crypto as a form of payment, and it's providing value as a medium of exchange and a store of value already. There's people working on like even just all of these like decentralized projects, like going beyond currency, like all of these the DAOs, like NFTs, like all of these things. Like I think people just like understands the value very easily. So I think there's a lot of potential. Though I think like what kinds of applications end up working, I think like I can't even predict it ahead of time. Like I'm terrible at predicting. Like 3 years ago I was on TechCrunch in San Francisco and I told the entire stage that NFTs are overrated. So I think it's ultimately like up to the Argentine people to like figure out what applications can succeed and to actually make it happen.
Yes. And NFTs, any other prediction that you dare say today?
I mean, like I feel like DAOs are like the thing that's finally ready to happen. It's like DAOs are the sort of thing that I think requires some level of like critical mass to be able to get some adoption. And we've been seeing I think at the beginning there were like only a few DAOs, right? Like obviously there was the DAO at the beginning, and that ended up like that was this kind of experiment that was not thought through very well, like neither on the economics nor on the technology. And people were predicting the economics would break, but the technology broke first, and of course, that led to some problems that we already know about. Since like over the last like maybe 2 years, we've seen this kind of second generation of DAOs where the economics and the technology are thought through much more. And like there's big DAOs, and then there's little DAOs, like there's DAOs behind DeFi projects, and then there's just like 20 people coming together and saying, hey, like we're the Buenos Aires DAO, or like we're the DAO for this particular city or this country, and like let's pull some resources together and like just try to like do useful things for our home. And that's it feels like the energy to make that happen is there. It feels like there actually are a lot of like very cool and useful things that could be done in that way. So I'm looking forward to DAOs doing more over the next 2 years.
Perfect. So not overrated, just a little old-fashioned maybe?
Yeah, well, there's like DAOs were like, first overrated and then underrated, and like I'm hoping that over the next few years they can become like properly rated and very successful.
Properly rated.
Yeah, I'm hoping they'll become very successful again.
So you think online communities that are starting to form around DAOs will end up meeting in real?
I feel like the kinds of like formats of cooperation that are emerging naturally over the internet, like they're outpacing formal structures very quickly already. But like even just one example within the Ethereum Foundation, like if we want to like do research around like improvements to the Ethereum protocol or improvements to zero knowledge proofs, improvements to VDFs, like any kind of cryptography, any kind of math, like what happens is like people just form a Telegram group, like 5 people from the Ethereum Foundation come in, like 2 people from Starkware come in, some people from Aztec come in, like some academics come in, and like people don't even really care about the formal structure, because like I think people subconsciously know that like the formal structure is stupid anyway. Like they're just like what matters is like getting the people in and like actually like doing the cooperation that needs to happen. It's this kind of very flash organization style, and then like the great things end up happening, right? And like we've seen that kind of style like sometimes even happen very quickly, right? Like EIP 4488 that was kind of like specced out very quickly over the course of about a week. EIP 4444 like fairly quickly over a few weeks. That was the history removal one that could improve scalability. EIP 4337 for account abstraction. That was like myself, then a couple of people from OpenGSN, a couple of people from Nethermind, and just like came together, made a Telegram group, figured it out over 2 months, and now it's just going from there. And like the nice thing about DAOs is that I think they're like a format for cooperation, like they're a formal structure that actually can be fast and responsive enough to work in this kind of world. So
that's perfect you said that, so I can ask about governments again.
Amazing.
Okay, so what do you think regulation would look like for a country that's trying to attract crypto talent and capital?
I think like there's obviously a spectrum of different things that governments could do. Obviously on the more extreme end of the spectrum, there's like adopting legal, like Bitcoin or Ethereum or like Shiba or whatever as a legal tender, and like if you want, you can obviously do that. Though I personally am like a fan of approaches that are kind of like not top down and coercive, and where like these things happen like when you already have like a lot of popular support for the thing, and it kind of starts off being grassroots. So like just having one politician from the top kind of like push everything and that's it, like it can also be unhealthy. But like if you have that level of support, then like you could. But it's also like still unrealistic for I think most places now. But then on the other ends, like just like much more marginal kind of lighter things, I mean, the simplest one is obviously just like not going after the crypto community, like just not like, taking all of these smart people that are trying to, create all of these amazing ways for people to be able to, cooperate, like interact with each other, fund things, and just like...
That one's very obvious.
Yeah, like either like, not ban it, not make it like extremely difficult. I mean, it's obvious, but a lot of people do fail it, right?
Yeah.
So that's one. The other, like another one that's like a bit further is like legal structures that make it easier for like smart contracts and DAOs to interface with the real world. So like the Wyoming DAO bill, for example, like I think it's clearly quite successful. Like there's a lot of DAOs that are actually registering in Wyoming and taking advantage of it. And like the reason why I think things like that are useful is that I think, there is a lot of opportunity for like DAOs as a structure to actually do things that like interact with physical assets in the real world, particularly land, right? Like I've like both myself and like a lot of economists I think are talking more and more about how like markets for like land and like real estate and physical property are quite broken in a lot of ways, right? Like if you just think about it very simply, like like most of the time you're either a landlord or you're a tenant, right? And if you're a tenant, then like often what happens is that you have negative exposure to the community you live in, right? Like if you're a tenant, you're renting a place, and then like some new industry becomes really successful, but you're not part of it, like what do you see? Like you just see your rent going up, right? And like that leads to people like often even understandably, but like very unfortunately, like even hating people that are trying to like bring cool and successful things into places. So trying to like things like fractional ownership, I think actually can fix that problem, right? Like if you, instead of like having this binary, you either have one place or you have 0 places, like let people build up ownership over time, even like have collective ownership. If you have like DAOs governing apartment buildings, then you could even have like, quadratic voting or some kind of governance over common areas. And if a person could even start like renting and then kind of like buy in and get more and more shares of proportion, like fractional ownership over time. So I think ideas like that, like they could be really good, right? I think there's a lot of room for experimentation there, but for that experimentation to be possible, like there has to be, the legal environment that that makes it easy, right? Like the legal environment that makes it possible for people to do this without every project having to have like a $30,000 legal bill. So that's another one. A third one is just like making it easy for people to come. Like, I'm a big fan of just like, visa on arrival programs for as many people as possible. Like, I think, it's a global world, and but at the same time, it's a world that I think is very unevenly global, right? Like for example, myself, like, I with a Canadian passport, like I have a lot of privilege, right? Like I can go to half the world and like, I don't need to like plan visa stuff ahead of time, and I could just like go there and, like within a couple of minutes the customs accepts me, right? And that's a privilege that a lot of people around the world, I think even people with Argentina passports don't have, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so like, and I think especially in this kind of a modern world that like depends so much on people being able to just like quickly come together and just like cooperate and do things, people being able to just like more easily move around and come is like something that's so valuable. So like even just for ourselves, right? Like when the Ethereum Foundation figures out like when to where to like host conferences, where to host meetups, like is it easy for people? Is it easy for our global community to come into the place? Like that's one of the criteria. So I think the more like the better any country does on that dimension, I think the more crypto friendly it is automatically.
Lower the barriers.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, other than the regulatory aspects, for a lot of these use cases, we need Ethereum to scale.
Yes.
How are things going on that front?
So, right now, for like we have this. There's like a lot of things that are happening in parallel in the Ethereum protocol, right? Like about a couple of weeks ago, I published this kind of roadmap diagram trying to describe what's going on, where you have the merge, the surge, the verge, the purge, the splurge.
This new roadmap. So I was on the phases roadmap. So now we have the merge, the splurge,
The Verge, The Purge, and The Surge. Yes.
Looks like a poem.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, a lot of the ideas are the same. I just kind of like drew the boxes in different ways and gave them funny names. And, you know, I hope people like the funny names and use them. But like the merge, obviously, proof of stake. I think you know, we all I love proof of stake. Well, okay. I mean, I should say. There are important things that do get lost with the switch to proof of stake, right? Like there's, like I think even if you look at like the early stages of mining, right, with proof of work, like Bitcoin from 2009 to 2012, it was this like very democratic thing. Anyone with a computer could just like go and get Bitcoin, right? And I think like if that did not exist, Bitcoin would not have succeeded, right? And like with Ethereum too, I think the 6 years of mining that we've had so far, like in terms of just opening up the supply more and letting more people get ETH, I think it's done a lot of good. But at the same time, like in the long term, like it's an industry that centralizes more and more, and you start to, like you have to be a business, you have to have like access to cheap electricity, and at the end of the day, it also kills trees, right? So the switch to proof of stake, I think, is like very important from us for like the environmental reasons and also the efficiency reasons. Like it's also an opportunity to make the protocol much better, to have transactions confirmed faster, to like make the network more efficient, add like light client support, just like a big long list of things. So very excited about the proof of stake switch. Now the proof of stake switch by itself does not give any scalability, right? But it does make it easier to add more scalability later on. So what's happening for scalability, right? This is the surge. So there's kind of two tracks, right? There's layer 1 scalability and then there's layer 2 scalability. Back in 2016, Ethereum's scalability strategy was like very focused on layer 1, right? Like there were all of these papers and ideas that we were writing where we would say, okay, you know, we would have all of these shards, and then on every shard we would process transactions, and then the protocol would provide complicated ways to move like assets and send messages between shards. Today, the design is a bit different, right? Like there is layer 1 scaling and layer 2 scaling. So the idea of layer 2 scaling is you create these second layer networks that use the blockchain for security, right? And they're connected to the blockchain, and they put a little bit, like some data from every transaction onto the blockchain, but which they have to do for security. But most of the computation, most of the data, most things are happening off-chain, right? And so what this means is that you have a system that can scale much more than the blockchain, but it it still gets all of the security of the blockchain, right? So if everyone switched to rollups today, and if rollups became like as efficient as rollups could be today, then the scalability of Ethereum could go up by a factor of like about 100, right? So you go right now, Ethereum processes about 15 to 45 transactions a second, depending on what kinds of transactions it is. If everyone moves to rollups and if rollups become efficient, then it could go up to like 1,500 to 4,500 transactions per second. So that's layer 2 scaling. Layer 1 scaling is, so Ethereum is doing sharding, but it's a simpler form of sharding. Like it's a simpler and a safer form of sharding that basically says, instead of trying to shard execution, transactions, smart contracts, data, like everything, the sharding just shards data, right? So like the Ethereum blockchain becomes like this kind of public billboard, right? It's like a place where you can post messages, and if you post a message, then like everyone is certain that everyone can see the message if they want to. And that billboard, like today, it goes up to like maybe 100 kilobytes to 1 megabyte every 13 seconds. After sharding, it will be 32 megabytes every 12 seconds, right? So there will be much more space, and rollups that use the layer 1 will have much more space to use. And so if you have layer 1 scaling and layer 2 scaling, they combine together, right? So today, 15 to 45 TPS, layer 1 scaling, 1,500 to 4,500, or sorry, layer 2 scaling, 1,500 to 4,500, layer 2 and layer 1 scaling together, like maybe 30,000 to 100,000 transactions, and then as computers get better, it can go like even higher over time. So the future of Ethereum scaling is bright, and I think the amazing thing that has been happening over the last couple of months is that like rollups are not just the future, right? Rollups are the present. Like today, you can go and you can move your assets to Optimism. You can do things on Optimism. You can move your assets to Arbitrum. You can do things on Arbitrum. You can move assets between Optimism and Arbitrum. You can do a lot of things inside of Starknet. The Starkware has been doing just like a lot of amazing work with ZK rollups, which use zero knowledge proofs, and so they support things like instant withdrawals. There's like Starknet is something where the alpha just like launched, I think, a couple of weeks ago. ZK Sync has also been around. It's like very programmable. Loopring has existed for a year, and I think they're starting to like think and work on like kind of turning into a fully featured, EVM at some point soon. Polygon, today it's still a kind of like a trusted sidechain, but like they bought the Hermes team, which was an amazing decision by them. Very happy that they they listened to the community feedback. They listened to the community that like wanted something that has a stronger trust guarantees, and now they're working on ZK rollups. So there's all of these amazing projects that are happening, and there's many more that I'm sure I even forgot to mention. Like there's just so many of these new teams, and like a lot of them, like they have things that you can go and use, right? Like I just moved 1 ETH over to Optimism, through Hop a few days ago just to see how easy it is, and it's like not that hard. So I think.
Were you stressed anyways, or no?
No, I don't think
stress.
I was stressed. No. So I think like the user experience is only going to improve, and like developers now can actually like start to see what the experience of layer 2 centric Ethereum will look like, and I think it will only get better from here.
Well, let's say we're in this future where we have 100,000 TPS. Obviously, during the first years of Ethereum, the use cases have been mostly financially oriented, like DeFi, because they had to be profitable contracts. But now that we have that kind of bandwidth, what new use cases beyond DeFi will emerge? What uses of Ethereum do you expect in a world where gas is cheap, bandwidth is pretty big?
I mean, I'm hoping that ENS is going to get used much more. I think ENS has been still the most successful non-financial Ethereum application so far. I mean, for those who don't know, ENS is the Ethereum name system. Like what it is, it's basically a kind of decentralized phone book, right? So basically, like anyone can go and register a name. So for example, I have Vitalik.eth, and there is a smart contract on Ethereum that stores a mapping that Vitalik.eth points to 0xD8DA blah, 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 right? Like my Ethereum address. And so if you go in like any Ethereum wallet, like MetaMask supports this, Brave supports this, like I think all of the big Ethereum wallets support this. Like if you want to send me money, which by the way you shouldn't, then yeah, like if you want to create a dog coin and advertise it as having my support, even though I don't actually support it and I've never heard of it, then you can type in Vitalik.eth and then type in how many trillions of dog coins you want to send, and then you click send, right? Like you don't even have to copy paste my address. So
that happened to you recently?
I guess, yeah. I mean, but please don't do that, right?
It's very clear. No one here is sending you money.
Yeah, if you want to send, first of all, don't create a dog coin. We've done enough dogs. I think we should do monkeys. If anyone here has been to Singapore, the Singaporean monkeys are incredibly cute, right? If you go on my blog, Vitalik.ca, there is an article, and notes on 2020. If you just scroll down, I have a picture in there of 2 of the Singaporean monkeys. They're just amazing. And then I even saw in Costa Rica, there's howler monkeys that are really lovely. Does Argentina have monkeys?
Not really, no.
Not really, okay, but Latin America has monkeys. I think we should have more monkey coins. So if you make a monkey coin, instead of giving half the supply to an individual, you should give half the supply to a DAO, and that DAO should fund charitable projects.
It's happening right now. Monkey coins are coming right now to a DAO next to you.
Exactly. So if you make a monkey coin where half the supply goes to a good charity, then I support you. Okay. Wait, okay. So we were talking about ENS, right?
ENS, right.
Yeah, so ENS I think is like an amazing Ethereum application. A lot of people use it. I even moved my blog over to, like, I use ENS and IPFS, right? Because my blog is stored on a centralized server, but the problem now is that so many people try to click on it and access it that whenever I post a new article on Twitter, the server just gets DOSed and nobody can actually read the article for at least a few hours.
And about that,
yeah.
Your last article on your blog post was published while you were here, right?
Yes. Was
it influenced in any way?
Good question. I don't know. Well, I guess.
Who should I ask?
Maybe. Is crypto a bulldozer? I mean, in some ways it is, and I hope it can be a very positive one. So what I do now is I upload my blog to IPFS, which is basically a decentralized network that just stores files, and then you take the hash of the root of the directory on IPFS, and then you upload that to ENS. And so now, if you access Vitalik.eth through a browser that supports it, then it asks Ethereum hey, what hash is Vitalik.eth registered with, and then you see the hash, and then it asks IPFS, what are the files that are connected to that hash, and you just download it, and it's fully decentralized, scalable. Well, okay, today I think it's still most of them still go through centralized gateways, but we're fixing that, right? With proof of stake, we're fixing that. We're fixing some of that, right? Because with proof of stake, we're going to have much better light clients, and so hopefully we can get rid of Infura centralization, right? Wallets are not going to have to dock to Infura. Wallets can talk to a whole bunch of light client servers, and they can actually verify the branches, they can verify the blocks, and we can have something that's much more decentralized and secure. So, if you're a wallet developer, please. Proof of stake, merge, we can have much more decentralized wallets. Let's do it. Let's get the ecosystem off of Infura centralization. By the way, did you know that the Infura logo looks very similar to the Chinese character for king? I just I don't know. The metaphor. I just find it so funny. No. I know they're great people. I really appreciate their work for making Ethereum more usable. But I think 2022 we can make Ethereum decentralized and usable. Let's do it.
What is your fear? We've seen recently action from some governments against proof of work chains.
Yes.
Against miners specifically in China. Suddenly a lot of miners had to find new jurisdictions. In Venezuela, the government surreptitiously took over a lot of mining facilities. What is the risk with proof of stake where if a government wants to take a hostile action against the network, what's your fear?
I actually think proof of stake is much more censorship resistant than proof of work. This is one of the benefits that people don't talk about enough, right? People focus on being more efficient and not killing the environment, which is all true, but
and very important.
Yeah, it is important, the censorship resistance aspect, right? With proof of work, what are you doing? Basically, you're just creating this big thing that consumes a huge amount of electricity that's just extremely visible, both to the power grid and probably to anyone flying a helicopter over that has an infrared camera, right? And so it's very easy to detect, and if you're mining, the government can just come in and just shut you down. You're probably even way more visible than the marijuana farms or whatever, right? Whereas with proof of stake, all you need to be a proof of stake validator is you just have a computer, yeah, and the computer can be anywhere, and it's just a tiny little computer, just one tiny internet connection. The data bandwidth is much less than someone torrenting, so it's I think it's very censorship resistant, and it's much more resilient in that way. So, another good side benefit of proof of stake. What else? Yeah, so that's proof of stake, right? Lots of benefits. We talked about scaling. Lots of benefits. I don't know. Do we want to talk about the Verge? I know it's kind of technical, like Verkle trees. Basically, the idea is that like you'll be able to verify individual Ethereum blocks without like having this big hard drive that stores the state, and without having to verify like every single block in history before that, which I think is really cool, right? Like you can basically have a node just like. You can verify Ethereum blocks, and like you can even verify any specific Ethereum block that you want. You would be able to like once you have a node, you just like turn it online and like just like start participating immediately. If you're a proof of stake validator, you're not going to need a big hard drive. You'll be able to like just go and like just even if you only have like a couple of gigabytes, you'll be able to just like go and be a staker. So I think it's
would you be able to validate from a mobile phone?
That's definitely my hope, right? Like I think, like I'm definitely a fan of mobile phone staking because like mobile phones are just like one great example of like a type of computer that lots of people have lying around that they're not using, right? Like if like there's just lots of secondhand phones, right? Like there's lots of people that just like wants to upgrade, and then like if you've upgraded, then you have an old mobile phone, and then if you have two old mobile phones, like you should give one of them to someone who doesn't have as much money as you do, and maybe like they are computers, and they're powerful enough computers, I think, to run the beacon chain as it is. I mean. Like over time, especially as we add like things like zero knowledge proofs, and we can make verification more and more efficient. I mean, I'm optimistic about that.
That level of adoption.
Yeah. So that's the Verge. The Verge is great. What else is there? There's the Purge, which is like basically, once again, like it's even more efficiency, right? Like nodes don't have to store the entire like 7 years of history anymore. Clients can get smaller because they don't have to like have all of this really complicated code for things from 2015. So just like all of these different things that we're doing to try to make the Ethereum protocol kind of like get lighter, become simpler, become safer over time. Like I think. Like a lot of people sometimes, like I mean, even especially sometimes from the Bitcoin side, criticize Ethereum for being this kind of like big bulky thing where it's hard to run a node, the code is really complicated, and all of these things. But like there's all of these different things that are on the roadmap that are all about reducing that problem over time, right? Like there's like Verkle trees reduce that problem a lot. The history pruning reduces that problem by a lot. Even like the layer 2 scaling strategy, right? Like it reduces that problem by a lot. So I think like my personal hope is that I think over the next 5 years, like Ethereum is going to get significantly lighter as a blockchain, and I think like it's really important, right? I think like today there's a lot of projects that try to kind of sacrifice decentralization for short-term scaling, and like I totally get why people are using those projects, right? Like because people want like to be on platforms where they can like use them, and like where sending a transaction doesn't take like 2 weeks' salary, which is like very fair. But I think there is this roadmap. Layer 2 protocols exist already. Layer 2 protocols are like much better than they were 1 month ago, and they'll be even better 3 months from now, and they'll be even better 6 months from now. We're going to have a future where we will have scalability, and at the same time, like I think the Ethereum community as a whole like does really cherish decentralization. Like if you just like look at the hard work that's being done by all the client teams, if you look at the hard work that's being done by all these layer 2 teams, like everyone really values this, and I think people do see I think the same future that I see, where over the next 5 years, like the protocol's going to be one that's like much easier to participate in, like despite being much more scalable than even what we see today.
So one of the challenges, other than the technical aspects, is the community and the leadership in these protocols. How do you lead yourself, the Ethereum community? What do you think are valuable lessons that you as a leader of the community, like good practices and a good culture that should be instilled into many of these projects and many of these ideas?
So I guess like my view on leadership and decentralization is that like to me decentralization is not an absence of leadership, right? Decentralization is about creating structures where like there can be leaders, but it's much more based on soft power and hard power. It's like leaders cannot just like go and say, you know, this is the way it will be because it's my will and screw you. It's much like to continue to be a leader, you have to continue to earn people's respect, and respect is something that you can lose at any time, right? And it's about having structures where new leaders can emerge permissionlessly. So you know, if someone has good ideas, then you know, they can kind of like rise up and get recognized naturally, and that's something that I think, you know, the Ethereum community gets better and better at, right? I think like there are definitely projects in the crypto space that's like that do have this kind of approach to decentralization that like really is about kind of like the rejection of any kind of leaders at all. And like you see this sometimes, especially in the projects that kind of emerge as forks, like, or even emerge as rebellions, right? Like often, like the way that they start is that they start as a group of people that are unhappy about, you know, what they see as like a centralized and dictatorial decision made by some majority. But then they go off and they create their own thing, but then they realize that like there's they don't really have a vision that they can coordinate around, right? And like everyone is like focused on resisting that, like there's no good direction that the project actually ends up going, right?
So the anger is not enough.
Exactly, yeah. Anger is not enough. You need a positive vision. I think that's true in politics. I think that's true in crypto. And like I think in Ethereum, right, like it's gotten more and more decentralized over time. And I think we're seeing the emergence of like more and more excellent even like leaders over time. Like Danny Ryan, for example, has done a really excellent job of, you know, coordinating, like basically being the bridge between the research community and the client developers, and like pushing his vision for like how the merge actually becomes a reality. You know, like Justin has done a great job of kind of expressing his ideas for like what Ethereum can be, how it can evolve technologically. You know, Dankrad has been doing more and more. So great leaders on the technology, great community leaders. I think, you know, like even like Santi has been a great community leader for Ethereum.
I think so too.
Yeah,
Thank you.
You know, I think the Ethereum community is like, I personally think it's even already at the point where, like, you know, even if I disappear tomorrow, I think it's going to continue to be a really great blockchain. Obviously, I have no plans to disappear tomorrow, but yeah. Well.
So how do you see, let's say in a couple of decades from now, the younger generations have grown up, these networks are scaling, are everywhere. Do you see this might bring a change in the landscape of the geopolitical scenario? It might disrupt nation states. We might get cities emancipating from countries, or...
Quite a bit. I mean, I think like decentralized technologies in general are, I think, going to help smaller countries more than they will help bigger countries. Like I think there's a lot of trends, I think, right now, like especially in centralized tech, that really are benefiting the bigger countries, right? Like if you look at the charts, like especially post 2008, like a lot of the GDP growth has been going to the US and China, right? Like the US has been, like if you look at the numbers, it's actually doing great, right? Like it's the one of the very few lines that's gone up, was going up before and it's going up still. China was going up before and it's going up still. Obviously slower than before, and it'll keep getting slower because like catch-up growth only gets you so far, but you know, still going up. A lot of the smaller economies, like, you know, they're fairly flat. And I think, you know, the network effects of a lot of these more centralized technologies are a big part of that. But one thing that we've seen, I think, is that like not every game is a game that the big countries are better at, right? Even if you look at COVID, like COVID, I think is a game where it's not at all obvious that the big countries do a better job, right? Like, you know, like very small ones, like, you know, like New Zealand, for example, I think like did very well at the beginning. But meanwhile, you know, the United States did less well at the beginning. Russia has, you know, not been doing this like that well the whole time. A lot of the smaller like if you just look around in the world and like see like how well the different places are doing at different periods, like I see no correlation between like how big or how small a place is and like you know, what its fortunes have been. And like to me, the value of crypto is in enabling this kind of cooperation that's much more transnational. And so I guess like the question is like, you know, can, you know, like Latin America, for example, like get the benefits of like looking like a big country without actually being politically centralized? And, you know, maybe crypto is part of the way to make that the answer be yes. So that you know, and you know, we've been seeing this already. Like as I mentioned, like, you know, Argentina has had a huge amount of crypto talent show up, despite kind of not really being a center of the world economy in a more traditional way. You know, we've been seeing a lot of great stuff come out of Singapore, a lot of, you know, great crypto stuff come out of Taiwan, a lot of great, you know, like especially like really amazing zero knowledge work. A lot of things come out of even just like communities that are scattered between a lot of different countries. So I think, yeah, like crypto really is a big opportunity in that way. So opportunity for smaller countries, opportunity for countries that have not been winners for the last 15 years. And I also think like a lot of consequences are unpredictable, right? Like there's the, you know, the famous quote that like a good sci-fi author predicts the car, a great sci-fi author predicts the traffic jam. You know, the question is like, you know, like what are the unintended consequences that are going to come out of like any new technology? And like, I don't know. I think, you know, I guess we're about to find out and see.
What were ones that you got wrong?
Predictions that I got wrong. I mean, I mentioned already, right, that I did not predict NFTs. What else did I?
I'm only asking because you got many right. So and I'm going for the exception. Yeah,
let me think. Like, what are some big things that I've changed my mind on? Obviously, like development schedules, how fast proof of stake would come out, how fast sharding would come out. Definitely very wrong on that. But then, like, I think like almost everyone has gotten that wrong, right? Like, yeah, like even, you know, the Bitcoin Lightning Network, for example, like it's, like people were like talking about it as like an alternative to like increasing the block size, as though it would actually get like released within a similar amount of time. But then, you know, we're here 5 years later and it's still getting technical challenges. But like, that's fine, right? Like it's, you know, there's a lot of these really like brilliant and smart people trying to like take the ideas behind the Lightning Network and turn them into something that's like as efficient and as practical for real people to be able to use. And it's just like, the problem is hard. And I think like a lot of the problems in like many kinds, like in Ethereum and in Bitcoin, and I think the newer chains are going to discover this too. A lot of the problems are harder than they anticipated. Like people who have been in Ethereum for a long time might remember the 2016 Shanghai attacks. So this is not the DAO attack, the Shanghai attacks. So this is in September to October 2016, there was this period in Ethereum's history, like about 1 month, where some very smart hacker, we still have no idea who it was, just like kept on finding bugs in the Ethereum protocol, right? Like it kept on finding like all sorts of different ways to make the Ethereum network slow down, like all of the inefficiencies in the Ethereum client implementations. And like for a long time, Ethereum struggled, right? Now, one good thing about Ethereum, right, is that like I do think the community really values decentralization, and one of the ways in which it values decentralization is that we have multiple implementations, right? Like there's multiple different software implementations of the same protocol, and so like it's not, the developers don't control Ethereum, right? Like even like one development team can't just go implement what it wants because, well, they have to talk to the other development teams. And at the time in 2016, we had 2 implementations. There were Geth and Parity. I mean, today we have Geth, Nethermind, you know, Teku, and Aragon, right? And then also for the you know, consensus layer clients, you know, there was Prism and Lighthouse and Nimbus. And Lodestar more and more. But at the time we had 2. And the attacker was not able to break both clients at the same time, right? Like sometimes the attacker would be able to find some attack that would break the way the Geth client does things, but then parity would keep working. Sometimes the attacker would find things that parity could not handle, but Geth would keep working. And so like the power users, they would just run both and they would just like switch from one to the other, right? But the Ethereum network still had this period of 1 month where we just like, it was this constant ongoing cyber war where, you know, like almost any minute, like the attacker would just like come up with some new attack and then oops, the chain, you know, the chain is really slow again, we have to make a fix. And it would be this big back and forth. Eventually we even have to do a hard fork. So like the attacker eventually did find a bug in the actual protocol, but you know, only one. It was the like making lots of self-destructs happen very cheaply. But then after that, like eventually we won. And so, you know, any new chain that exists, like eventually they're going to get their Shanghai attacker. And you know, are they going to be able to handle their equivalent of a Shanghai attacker? We're going to see. So
maybe you can tell them how you managed to do it.
You should give some advice to the Solana folks.
I mean, like obviously, like make sure like to do a good job of figuring out like how the gas pricing works, right? Like a lot of people don't do gas pricing well. It's a hard problem. I don't know. I mean, like the simplest hack is to just copy the EVM and then find some like wrappers to parallelize it, right? Which there are actually some good ideas on how to parallelize the EVM. Like there's EIP 648, which is like, I think it was called easy parallelizability. It was my proposal for how to turn the EVM into something multi-core. Like I've talked to the Optimism people about this and they're excited about trying to implement it. I mean, I think Arbitrum people might be as well. So like if I was, let's say, Binance Smart Chain, right? Because like Solana so far has taken the route of saying they're going to create their own VM. But if you're just copying the EVM, then like which BSC has done, right? And BSC, you know, they do have a lot of users. So if they want to like get more scaling by parallelizing, then you know maybe they could implement EIP 648, and then like they could actually make a serious contribution to you know Ethereum ecosystem research. Yeah, you know, hope they do. Open invitation. So. Yeah, no, like this, there like scaling tricks are definitely this kind of really fascinating and tough challenge, and I'm looking forward to seeing, you know, both how these like other layer 1 chains and also how the layer 2s and like the Ethereum rollup family manage to solve them over the next couple of years. It will be really fun.
So beyond the crypto and Ethereum, I heard that, for example, you have an interest in life extension technologies.
Yeah.
Like what areas of tech are you looking into, and why you have interest in those areas?
Yeah, I mean, I think biotech in general is very exciting. Like, I think it's very possible that we're going to see as much progress in biotech over the next 70 years as we saw in computing over the last 70 years. Right? Like if you think about computing over the last 70 years, like in 1950, you know, like we had these big computers, like I think we had the ENIAC for the first time, and even in the 1960s, like we had these big computers that were like the size of a room, and the science fiction of the time, you know, it was predicting that everyone would have flying cars, we would be going to Alpha Centauri, and like we would have, you know, like these machines that would make magic food for everyone, but the computers would still be as big as a room. What happens in reality? We don't have the flying cars yet, though that might be changing soon. You know, we're not in Alpha Centauri yet, but you know, the computers, like. The computers are tiny, you know, but like, you know, and the computers are so much more, even more powerful than what the sci-fi was predicting. So, like, what is the equivalent of like ENIAC to a modern smartphone for biology? And I think the equivalent is like going from where biology is today, which is already amazing, right? Like if you look at like just how quickly the COVID vaccines managed to be developed, like I think it's like a massive testament to human ingenuity, right? Like the vaccines, like basically, like it went from the viruses being sequenced to people figuring out what the vaccine would look like, you know, within a few days to a few weeks. So like the only reasons I think we did not have vaccines like half a year before we actually did are like procedural reasons, right? Like basically people are much more afraid of negative consequences as a result of action than they are of negative consequences as a result of inaction, right? Because if there's negative consequences because of inaction, like who do you blame, right? So I think like it's only because of human problems that like, you know, we didn't just like already have everyone vaccinated by the end of 2020. Like so the state of that technology is amazing today, but like what would that be that plus 70 years? Like I'm already reading articles that say like, oh, there's like some Japanese team that's developing vaccines against senescent cells. Senescent cells are like this one, basically what happens is that like cells like have problems in them, and normally when a cell has a problem, like it commits suicide, right? Like the fancy biology term for this is apoptosis, like the cell just blows up. But sometimes the cell breaks in such a way that like even the mechanism for the cell apoptosizing also breaks, and so they just kind of sit there and the cell just kind of keeps, you know, spewing poisons in your body. And there's like this theory that this is one of the major mechanisms for how aging happens. Like there's just more and more senescent cells and they keep like spreading junk in our bodies, and this like causes things to degrade. Not the only mechanism, but one of them, right? And like apparently this team has like a vaccine that might be able to like do something against these cells. And they're not the only project, right? Like there's even like studies that are looking at the question of like, you know, if you just like basically like replace a big chunk of like people's blood with like basically water and protein once every year, right? Like, you know, would that by itself be enough to get rid of the senescent cells? There's even studies that show that like, you know, is donating your blood once a year like enough to have some impact? So a lot of studies, a lot of research, both kind of like very low-tech things and like trying to figure out if it works, and also very high-tech things. Like we're still in the stone age of like figuring this stuff out, but I can easily see 70 years from now, like us being able to like basically reverse aging to the point and like basically do with the human body what we can do like with cars today. Like that kind of future is going to be really amazing in a way that I think people haven't adapted to yet, right? Like lots of countries around the world have big demographic problems. If aging, you know, stops being a problem, then, you know, they don't have demographic problems anymore. You know, if like population decline, huge problem. We might not have population decline as a problem anymore. And, you know, population's going to go up. Well, you know, guess what? Like we also have these amazing people that are figuring out how to like how to set ourselves up on Mars. We're even figuring out ways to like just, you know, do much more efficient and better agriculture here on Earth. We're figuring like there's technologies for carbon capture. There's like technologies for just like improving the environment on our even on our own planet as it is today. So there's just like technologically there's just so much that we could be excited about. That yeah, I mean I think you know the 21st century in a lot of ways is going to be a really great century, and I think you know there's a lot of things for like people everywhere to be excited about.
Bueno. Guys,
yes.
So I just wanted to let everyone know that Ask Vitalik VA, it's trend topic now, yes, in Argentina.
Trending topic, all right.
And I've been sharing with you and you, yes, different questions, like 6, 7 questions each. Some social, some technical, yes, for Vitalik, done from the people from different places. We have people from Spain, well, from everywhere in the world writing. So this is what I suggest. Olivia, if you want to do one of them question, you can do it, but start reading and choosing which ones you want to answer.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Here's one. What do you think, which is the best role politics should take towards crypto adoption?
I feel like I've talked quite a bit about that already, right?
Okay, let's go to the next one.
Sure.
Is there a scenario in which you would say Ethereum failed?
I think if Ethereum fails to scale, then Ethereum definitely fails. If Ethereum succeeds at scaling, but it turns into something that's very centralized, then I think it's also failed. If Ethereum succeeds at scaling and at being decentralized as a blockchain, but nothing interesting gets built on top of it and no one actually like gets value from it, then it also fails. So those are all risks, and I think you know, those are definitely things that we really need to like try hard to guard against. But I think there's a lot of people who are like in the community who are very dedicated and who are trying hard to guard against all of those things. So I'm optimistic.
Do
you think that ETH might end, this is not even about the flippening, might end the dominance of BTC or like make BTC obsolete?
I feel like what's happening with cryptocurrencies is that like it's one of the reasons why it's hard for any of them is to go to zero is that like they get really dedicated communities, right? Like these aren't just products, like these are ecosystems around communities that have values. Like if you talk to Ethereum people and if you talk to Bitcoin people, like the things that they talk about, the things that they care about, the ideas that they have about technology, the ideas that they have about politics, about society, like a lot of them are very different, right? Like like if I went on a Bitcoin stage and I talked about how much I love the vaccines, I'm sure people would like throw things at me. But maybe in some places, maybe not everywhere. So like just because of that, I think like Bitcoin is not going to go away. Like even if Ethereum scales, even if everything I say about like it becoming more decentralized turns out to be true, look, there is gonna be this big like group of people that still is gonna love and stay with Bitcoin because it's like Bitcoin is Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is the people that they love and that they've grown up with. So I think
grown up with, that's a harsh one. Like,
yeah, no, it's. I really do think that both Bitcoin and Ethereum have enough people that are kind of like very just like dedicated with their lives to it to that extent that it's neither of them are going to disappear. These really are digital nations in that way.
Another one. What's your opinion about NFTs, communities, and projects in art and gaming?
I mean, I'm very happy to see that NFTs are just are so successful among artists. Like I think art is it is a public good. It's something that provides value to a lot of people, but it's something that can be very difficult to find business models for directly. And the fact that NFTs are coming to exist as a business model, I think, is something really amazing. I'm definitely happy to see just like there being more models for funding things. So that's like the good side, right? And what I'm hoping for now, I think, is to try to one is I think. You can't declare victory until you've survived at least one full market cycle, right? Like NFTs so far, this has been a bull cycle, and NFTs have done well, but we have not seen a bear cycle yet. Yes. Are NFTs going to survive a bear cycle? Are any of the crypto punks and the opti punks and all of the loot and the ether orcs and all of this stuff? Are they going to go to 0 3 years from now? The next time that Bitcoin or ETH go down by 80%, which nobody knows where they start from, but people have to be prepared that wherever the bear market starts from, there is going to be a bear, and everyone should be psychologically prepared for that. Are the NFTs going to drop by 50% or 80% or 99%? We don't know yet. I think until NFTs as a thing have survived a full cycle, I think it's important for us to kind of not declare victory with NFTs yet, right? Because ICOs were a bubble. Lots of ICOs ended up failing. Are NFTs going to last? We'll see. But I think part of the solution to NFTs lasting, part of the way in which NFTs can become something that lasts, is if we start seeing NFTs that have more functionality attached. If we start seeing NFTs that are not just about buying and bragging, but NFTs that are about oh, I have this thing and I can use this thing to do things. This is a virtual item and it has some value in this kind of virtual, decentralized metaverse that we're all co-creating. If we can come up with something like that, then that's an NFT that I think could have very meaningful long-term value. Is that art? Is that a game? I don't know. I think the categories are all merging, right?
Yes. Entertainment, information.
Yeah, but it'll all come together, and I think what's the combination that can actually succeed and that actually can provide sustainable value to people? I think we're going to find out.
You mean uses besides something that good for the community that owns them?
Yeah.
This one in Spanish. Oh. ¿Qué preferís, tacos o asado?
Tacos.
Con tenedores duros. Yeah. Hard forks.
Oh, hard forks. Sí, tenedores duros.
Here's a question from the audience. I was wondering about what you think about the implications of decentralization of illegal activities.
Interesting. I guess, like, it depends what kind of illegal activities. I mean, I think, you know, for as long as there have been rules, there have been people breaking the rules. But there's obviously some illegal activities that are like actually totally fine, and then there's some illegal activities that are harmful, and there's some that don't really need decentralization, but there's also some that do need decentralization, or that at least do benefit quite a bit from decentralization. I think, like, ultimately we can't solve every problem, right? And there has never been an age in human history without problems. But, you know, there are things that we as a community can do to try to mitigate at least some of them. Like, one example of an illegal activity that I think is bad and where I think, like, we can do something is scams, right? Like, scams are, I mean, they're bad, they're illegal, and they are something that I think is harmful, like, both to society and to, especially in lower income countries where there's a lot of people who don't have financial education, and, like, there's just, like, you know, people who are bad people and that are trying to, like, go after their savings. And we as a community, I think, could make an impact by trying to, like, do more in, like, both warning people about the scams, even, like, people who make things like wallets, like people who make the gateways that people use to access the crypto world. Like, they could do more in trying to, like, be very quick and proactive in, like, detecting what the scams are, and, like, you know, like, if people end up, like, going into them without realizing it, then, like, actually stopping them.
So you think that level of control is going to come from inside the crypto community?
I mean, I think, like, obviously, if it doesn't come from the crypto community, it'll come from governments. But if it comes from governments, then, like, you know, we know, like, as I said, right, like, you know, Argentina, you know, low state capacity, high people capacity. And, like, that's, I think it's even...
That might be our best slogan yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's true of a lot of places, right? So, like, the government solution, if it has to come to that, like, will be very ham-fisted. It's going to end up destroying a lot of good things. Like, we even saw this with ICO, right? Like, we even...
The government is
no,
tampering with the mic.
Yeah, you know, we even saw this with ICOs, right? Like, I think, like, ICOs, like, they caused a lot of problems, but also, like, a lot of very beautiful things came out of ICOs. Like, just one personal example of, like, I think something very beautiful that came out of ICOs is that, like, there's a lot of projects that had big US communities and big Chinese communities, right? Like, and there were projects that were really global and, like, really, like, that actually did manage to, like, stretch across barriers where institutional cooperation is, like, very difficult, especially in the modern environments, right? And, like, the only way that could happen is that it's grassroots to grassroots, and, like, you have projects and you have people on, you know, both sides, even on all sides, that saw the ICO and that bought in and that became part of that community. A lot of the more modern, and these more centralized projects, they end up getting VC funding, right? And the problem with VC funding is that, like, you know, it's a format that naturally, like, pushes you toward getting your support from the same group of people who all know each other, right? Because, like, getting funding from VCs, like, it requires talking to people, and you're going to talk to people who you trust. Like, you have to have the trust in the relationship, and so you're going to go for what is familiar, right? And what the result is that, you know, there's just a lot of projects where the initial coin holder base is, like, very US centric. And, you know, like, I'm a very big, you know, I'm a believer in this kind, you know, like, in the idea that, like, the crypto space is global. And I think, you know, it's like, I think if you are going to be pro-freedom, then you have to be globalist to some extent, right? Like, you know, you have to be something that's not centered around one country. Like, you have to be about, like, people from anywhere around the world, like, being able to and actually participating. And that's something that I think Bitcoin did very well. I think that's something that Ethereum also did well. But if a project has a centralized beginning, then, like, it's very difficult for it to actually, like, kind of break out of that box, right? And I think, like, the reason why projects now are going for VCs instead of ICOs, a lot of it is regulation, right? Now, I do think that we have a round 2, right? And the round 2 for a kind of decentralized launch is DAOs, right? There are a lot of projects that are even launching as DAOs. There's projects that are turning themselves into DAOs very quickly. And, like, that's beautiful, right? And I think that actually is a chance for us to kind of go back to projects that do have this kind of decentralized community-driven beginning. But it's a place where, we have a responsibility to make sure that goes well. We have a responsibility to promote norms that make sure that this happens well. We have a responsibility to kind of set up the tools so that people know what they're getting into, to promote structures that are, difficult for scammers to take advantage of, and either we can do a good job of all of these things, or we can do a bad job of all of these things, and 5 years from now, the space goes back to centralization. So, which one is it going to be? I think, we as a community have that choice.
How do you see, I promise this is a question from the audience, but how do you see Ethereum disrupting social media through things like proof of humanity and all of these, things that can help bring accountability?
I think social media is one of those places that's very ripe for new and innovative ideas in mechanism design, because the problem with social media is a mechanism design problem, right? Because it's a problem, it's a place where the whole thing survives because of inputs that are provided by its users, right? Without its users, a social media platform is nothing. But then it's also an environment where you have to really make sure that you're encouraging users to do the right things and discouraging them from doing the wrong things, right? If you look at even just Twitter, for example, right? It's a platform that's just there is a lot of good that can come out of it. There's a lot of good friends that I've made from Twitter conversations, but at the same time, it's an environment where it just easily encourages this kind of very, moralistic, righteous, just everyone yelling at each other. And it's that's not good for nuanced discussion. That's not good for kind of positive sum discourse. And Twitter also has a lot of these problems with, spam. If anyone has looked at, the responses to anything I tweet, it's just that, I tweet something about, even just some philosophical article that's almost not related to crypto, and people are like, Vitalik, look, he mentioned Cosmos. Look, this article mentioned Cosmos. This means that Vitalik supports atoms, and you should buy atoms. Look, hey, when is ETH going to go to 10,000? Look, he said this thing, look, this means that the future is Octagon coin. Everyone should go buy Octagon coin. I actually have no idea if Octagon coin exists. If it doesn't, then you should launch Octagon coin and you should give 7/8 of the supply to charity. That would be amazing. Yeah. So, but if Octagon coin exists today and it doesn't do that, then I don't support it. So it's just, and then obviously there's a lot of manipulation with people having tens of thousands of fake accounts that just and retweet everything. I think I saw even someone made this really fun demonstration where they made a tweet, I think, that was complaining about the lack of quality of basically Twitter abuse prevention, and then within 15 minutes they bought 5,000 likes for that tweet, which is it was just so fascinating to see that. Better mechanism design to kind of reduce the exploitability of social media, I think, is a big problem. And the reason why it's important, right, is because the other thing that we want to avoid is we want to avoid centralized solutions to that problem, right? Once you have a centralized solution, if your solution just depends really heavily on this opaque group of people or an opaque group of algorithms deciding what's good and bad, then you've basically created this completely unaccountable thing that nobody understands, and it has to be opaque, because if it wasn't opaque, then the scammers could figure out how to dodge it. But then that ends up having this huge amount of control over culture and politics and society, and that's also bad, right? So if we can have social media that's good at encouraging people to contribute good things and not contribute bad things, and do so in a way that is based primarily not on centralized moderation, but on open, transparent, and decentralized kind of mechanism design and incentives, that's something that could be really good for humanity. So I really encourage people to do more experiments in that direction. I know people are.
Are we happy about Jack leaving Twitter?
That's a good question. I mean, that whole thing is a mystery, and I think there's a lot of different possibilities, right? whenever someone leaves something, you always have to read between the lines. Like corporate press releases about people leaving are almost never sincere. Like that's a rule.
They're never sincere.
Yeah, so you have to ask, like, what is the inside story? Like, did Jack get fired? Did Jack maybe leave because he saw that there isn't that much opportunity to do things from Twitter on the inside, and like, did he want to just focus full time on promoting like his vision of open permissionless finance through Bitcoin on Square? I mean, I don't know. I don't have access to the inside of his brain. Like I feel like I have like actually few of these like magic backdoor communication channels than people think. Or like even all these government people I talk to, that's not me. That's like the other local community people.
While he still has his handle, he tweeted last night something about Web3 and VC funding.
Yeah, like Jack said that he does not like Web3. That was fascinating. I think. I don't know. I think part of it might be this kind of like this Bitcoin mindset that says that like money needs to be decentralized, but like everything else, centralization is totally fine, which like I personally don't get. I mean, I don't know. Maybe Bitcoin people can make a defense of it. Maybe they can make a tweet storm or maybe a blog article and they can upload it to IPFS. But yeah, I mean, that's not my viewpoint, right? Like that's their. So I think. IPF, to me, decentralization is, and like especially the idea of credible neutrality, this idea of like creating mechanisms where like when you need to, have kind of some kind of engineering like protocols to like encourage people to do more good things and fewer bad things, like having that be based on open and transparent rules where everyone can understand like why those rules are there and why those rules like don't just like favor one political party is something that I think is really valuable, and I think it's something that the Ethereum community, for example, understands very deeply. So I want more decentralized social media. I want more decentralized currency. I want more decentralized stablecoin. Well, okay, no, I think stablecoins are actually fine. Like I think most of the time, people who like innovate and say, "Oh, look, I have a new stablecoin that has like better algorithmic governance. Please, VCs, give me $25 million." Like. That seems to have a very bad track record, and unless you're a hacker, then it has a great track record. So, stablecoins are okay, but like we need more innovation in DAOs. We need more really good work in like layer 2 scaling and privacy, in interfaces between decentralized technology and the physical world. Like more like startups or even like DAOs working on. Like things like fractional ownership of real estate that I mentioned before. I think we need all of this stuff. I think the value of decentralization goes far beyond money. I guess I love cryptocurrency. I love Web3. I love blockchains. I love zero knowledge proofs. I think do I love distributed ledger technology? If the ledgers are politically decentralized too, then I love it. I mean, like consortium chains, I think have clearly mostly failed. Everyone keep building.
Okay, another question from the audience.
Everyone keep building.
The last question from the audience. What advice would you give to a young 18-year-old, dreaming about the future today?
I think the world is open to you. I think it's we're entering this point where like there's a lot of like elements of the old order that are collapsing, and that's true in technology. It's true in politics. It's true in economics. But at the same time, we're at a place where we're not really sure what the things that replace it are going to look like, and it's part of your choice. It is your opportunity and your responsibility to like be part of figuring out what that solution is and helping to build it. The world is open. Like blockchains in particular are a space that is, I think, still very accessible. There's a lot of different communities. You can go in and like participate, try to build something. Talk to people locally. Go online, join the Discords, join the Telegrams, and like try to figure out and see if there's something out of this space where that you can be part of, and something great that you can make.
Vitalik.
I think a big thank you is in order from all of us to you.
I think
so
that
thank you very much for coming here. It means a lot.
I should also say thank you to the, thank you to Rodolfo, thank you to Santi, thank you to just the amazing community here for just like organizing this whole thing, like going from having no idea this will happen to like being here with 800 people, very well executed work within like, was it like 55 hours? As I said, very high people capacity. It's amazing. Fine. Hi, people. Oh, thank you.
It's a famous candy from Argentina.
Okay. What
¿Qué
is
le
it?
dice? ¿Qué le dieron?
La remera.
Okay.
Ahora vamos a ver. Thank you, Vitalik.
Vitalik, I've done, hello. I've done several events, yes. I don't remember to see such a packed event yet. Yes, so congratulations.
You are changing.
Congratulations to Argentina.
And we had thousands of people watching online at the same time.
It is not an understatement that in these 5 days you've been in Argentina, very likely you have changed the history of this country. And we will see what happens in the future now. Thank you, Vitalik, for coming to Argentina.
Thank you.
This is not a commitment. I just hope you are able to come back to Argentina soon, yes? And if you plan, come back on December next year, because we're doing LABITCONF here, so...
Okay, we'll keep that in mind.
Muchas gracias a todos por venir.
Gracias a todos.
Ha sido una noche inolvidable.
¡Uy!
Oh, currículums, ¿qué es eso?
Curriculum. CVs. Well, a big round of applause again, please.